Hello everyone and welcome back to Boring History for Sleep. As you settle deeper into the quiet of this evening, perhaps with a soft blanket and the gentle hum of your surroundings, we're going to embark on a journey that might at first sound a little grim, but promises a profound understanding of resilience. Tonight we gently unravel the brutal realities of life for medieval women, a topic often romanticised, but one that when viewed through the unvarnished lens of daily existence reveals immense hardship. If these historical whispers find a welcome place in your thoughts and help you drift toward a peaceful rest, a quiet subscribe and a soft like are always appreciated, and we always find it a gentle connection to know who's joining us in this historical drift. Feel free to share where you're listening from in the comments below. Now allow your mind to softly drift as we journey back to a time where life, particularly for women, was defined by an almost unimaginable struggle. Imagine, if you will, the crisp, often cold air of medieval Europe as you draw your first breath. From that very moment you are born into a world where your path is not merely influenced, but rigidly defined by systems as ancient and unyielding as the stone walls of any castle. Your entire existence, from the chill of your cradle to the silence of your grave, is a predetermined journey. There's little room for personal ambition, for self-determination, as you understand it today. You're quite simply born into a fixed social hierarchy and an almost absolute subordination to men. First your father dictates your life, then your husband, and quite possibly even your adult sons. You learn quickly that your identity and legal standing are typically subsumed into that of your male guardians, a long shadow cast over every waking moment. You recognise that society is fundamentally patriarchal. This isn't just a casual observation, it's the very air you breathe, the unspoken law governing every interaction. Inherent rights or freedoms, as you might conceive them in your modern world, are almost entirely absent for you as a woman. You watch, you learn, you adapt. While the trappings of life certainly vary, a wealthy noblewoman might reside in a stone manor while you, a peasant girl, live in a wattle and daub hut. The fundamental challenges and limitations apply across this brutal spectrum. These are deeply rooted in the prevailing cultural beliefs reinforced by the church and etched into the very fabric of your daily life. Consider those women who exist without the crucial protection of a male figure, the widow without male heirs, the spinster, or the unmarried older woman. You see them on the fringes of your community, subject to deep societal suspicion. They lack formal protection and often find themselves marginalised, impoverished, and chillingly vulnerable to accusations that can turn a whisper into a ruinous roar. Then there are the truly disposable, the prostitutes of medieval cities. While a grim necessity in bustling urban centres, often confined to designated red-light districts like London Southwark, these women exist on the absolute social margins. They are reviled, subjected to harsh fines or public humiliation. If caught operating outside approved boundaries, their lives considered utterly cheap and disposable. You learn too of the women who sink into vagrancy or out of desperation, join wandering criminal bands. Their fate under medieval law is swift and brutal, flogging, branding, or even mutilation for even petty crimes. This starkly highlights the perils of living outside established social structures, of having no man to claim or protect you. You are legally and socially often regarded as property. This isn't a metaphor, it's a cold, hard fact. You're a commodity to be transferred from one male hand to another. Your intrinsic worth is inextricably tied to your dowry, your chastity, and most critically, your ability to produce children. Your individual spirit, your intellect, your dreams, these are in the grand scheme of things often irrelevant, overshadowed by your biological and social utility. You're a vessel, a means to an end for the continuation of a family line, or the forging of a strategic alliance. Awakening each day, a cold, thin light filtering through the smoke hole or small unglazed window of your dwelling, you're immediately aware of the slow, relentless rhythm of the agrarian economy that dictates every breath, every muscle strain. Your world revolves around the land. Ceaseless human and animal labour in the fields and around the homestead forms the primary, often back-breaking engine of your family's survival. You feel it in your shoulders as you carry water in your hands, as you weed in your lower back as you bend over the soil. This isn't just work, it's the very foundation of your existence, a constant, exhausting struggle for sustenance that rarely, if ever, eases. For the vast majority of people you know, daily life is characterized by a pervasive, gnawing anxiety of resource scarcity. It's a low hum beneath all your thoughts, a constant reminder that abundance is a fleeting myth, and famine is a very real, very present threat, often just one bad harvest away. Your diet is profoundly monotonous, a bland repetition of whatever meagre vegetables your patch of land yields, perhaps some cabbage onions or root vegetables. You learn to appreciate the simple, earthy taste of boiled greens, because variety is an unaffordable luxury. Imagine eating the same basic meal day after day, year after year. That's your reality, and it's a form of deprivation that grinds down not just the body but the spirit. You as a peasant woman, along with your family, bear the disproportionate brunt of heavy taxation. This isn't money as you know it, but payment in kind sacks of grain, perhaps a scrawny chicken or a precious piglet. Sometimes it's mandatory labour days spent working the Lord's land, leaving you with tragically meagre resources after fulfilling your feudal obligations. It feels like an endless cycle of toil where the fruits of your labour are constantly siphoned off, leaving you just enough to scrape by if you're lucky. And luck, you realise, is a fickle friend in this world. There is virtually no formal social safety net. When you see an elderly widow, her eyes clouded with hunger, begging for a scrap of bread, you understand that her fate could easily be yours. If you are widowed or infirm without immediate family support, you're forced into desperate begging or relegated to living on the grudging charity of relatives. Their final years are shadowed by bleak poverty, a testament to a society that offers little solace to the vulnerable. Your economic standing is almost entirely dependent on your male relatives. Without a husband or sons securing even the most basic necessities, becomes a precarious, often desperate and soul-crushing endeavour. You're constantly teetering on the edge of utter destitution, a profound vulnerability that looms over your choices, your hopes and your very survival. Most families operate within a highly localised subsistence economy. You produce nearly all your food, clothing and tools within your own household or immediate village. Access to external markets or manufactured goods is severely limited, fostering a profound sense of isolation. Your world is small, defined by the boundaries of your village, your fields, and the seasonal cycle. You know intimately the texture of the soil, the weight of the water bucket, the smell of wood smoke and damp earth. This intense self-sufficiency is born of necessity, not choice. The true currency of your life, you soon learn, is grain. Wheat, oats or rye. Their successful harvest is directly linked to your family's ability to pay rent taxes and stave off starvation. The smell of freshly threshed grain fleeting and precious signals a brief reprieve from that gnawing hunger, a reminder of the delicate balance between survival and suffering, a balance that can be shattered by something as unpredictable as a change in the weather. And it is precisely that unpredictability of the natural world, its indifference and relentless fury, that presents the next profound layer of brutality you must endure in this life, often with quiet, heartbreaking resignation. Beyond the relentless economic grind, you live under the constant, overwhelming shadow of nature's relentless fury and universal threats. From the moment you witness your first infant burial, a tiny shroud barely visible in the cold earth, you understand that childhood is a brutally precarious and fleeting stage. Especially for girls like yourself, the odds are stacked against you. Estimates suggest that a heartbreaking 30–50% of children do not live to see their 5th birthday. They are claimed indiscriminately by accidents, the pervasive malnutrition that weakens tiny bodies, and the rampant diseases that sweep through your village like an unseen reaper. You learn not to get too attached to cruel lesson that twists your heart even as you can't help but hope for better for the next child. Your community, you quickly realise, has little to no organised disaster relief. When widespread famines strike, and they strike with a chilling regularity, or devastating floods turn your fields into muddy lakes, there is no governmental aid, no national reserves. These catastrophes sweep through populations with merciless abandon, leaving behind the sight of ravaged landscapes and the unmistakable smell of death and decay. Survivors are left to their own desperate devices, reliant on the kindness of neighbours, if any kindness can be spared in such bleak times. You watch helpless as families dwindle, as desperation turns people's eyes hollow. Disease is a constant, terrifying companion. You hear the coughing, the moaning, the frantic prayers. The Black Death, for instance, swept through Europe with indiscriminate fury in the 14th century. Imagine witnessing nearly 60% of the population vanish, an almost unimaginable loss that leaves a palpable pall of mourning over every community, every family. The silence in the aftermath is almost as terrifying as the screams during the plague's peak. You learn to live with a quiet anxiety, knowing that any cough, any fever could be the beginning of the end. But for you, a woman, there is an additional, arguably the single greatest threat: pregnancy and childbirth. These are incredibly perilous endeavours that claim countless promising lives due to alarmingly limited medical knowledge, appallingly poor hygiene, and devastating complications. You see strong, vibrant women full of life reduced to pale, sweating figures, only to vanish into the quiet grief that follows. It's a legacy you inherit, this knowledge that bringing life into the world might cost you your own. Persistent malnutrition, particularly rampant among peasant women, often leads to debilitating conditions like rickets. You've seen women with bowed legs with spines that twist unnaturally. What you might not realise until you experience it, or witness it in a close relation, is how this malnourishment tragically deforms pelvises, making the already excruciating process of childbirth even more agonising and frequently fatal. It's a silent sentence etched into your very bones by years of insufficient food, a testament to the brutal unseen toll of poverty. Without any understanding of germ theory or effective sanitation, even common illnesses could rapidly escalate into devastating epidemics. A simple cold can turn into fatal pneumonia, a minor cut can fester into an untreated infection that claims a limb or your life. Zoonotic diseases passed from animals you live alongside are a constant threat. There are no reliable cures, no hospitals in the modern sense. You live with a pervasive quiet anxiety, knowing that every sneeze, every scratch, carries the potential for a swift and brutal end. This world you quickly internalise is one of constant threat. Beyond the dramatic and visible disasters, daily existence is overshadowed by these endemic, insidious dangers. You learn to simply endure, to hope, and to find what small comforts you can amidst the perpetual peril. From these stark, overarching realities of a brutal medieval world, you now begin to narrow your gaze to the tangible, often deeply uncomfortable daily grind of individual women whose personal struggles define their very existence, and you understand just how much grit it takes to simply exist. As your eyes adjust to the dim light of dawn, you become acutely aware of the conditions that define your home, your shelter. For common folk like you, life unfolds within small, cramped 1- or 2-room hovels. The walls are constructed from wattle and daub wooden stakes interwoven with sticks, then packed with a crude, muddy mixture of straw and manure. It's surprisingly insulating in a way, but creates a perpetually damp and earthy atmosphere that clings to everything: your clothes, your hair, even the very air you breathe. You'll never quite shake the smell of damp earth and smoke, even in your dreams. These rudimentary dwellings offer little respite from the biting damp and raw cold that perpetually seeps up from the hard-packed dirt floors. Imagine the chill that penetrates your bones, especially during the harsh, interminable winters. You often share your living space, perhaps even your sleeping space, with animals, a pig, a few chickens, not for companionship, but for their body warmth. This, of course, leads to a stifling heavy air thick with the smell of animal and human, a constant reminder of how intertwined your survival is with that of your livestock. You learn to ignore the lowing, the clucking, the rustling as part of the soundtrack of your existence. The thatched roofs, while providing some cover from rain, are a constant battle to patch against leaks. You watch the drips during a downpour, moving your meagre possessions to avoid the spreading dampness. Worse, these roofs are often veritable hotels for vermin rats, mice, insects. You can hear their disquieting scampering sounds above you at night, a constant reminder of unwanted guests. The musty odour of old straw and animal droppings contributes to an overall unsanitary environment that you simply accept as normal, for what other choice do you have? Even if you were a noblewoman residing in a grand stone castle or manor house, you would quickly realise that these impressive structures, though offering more expansive spaces and a retinue of servants, fundamentally lack the conveniences you take for granted today. There's no running water. Instead, servants carry heavy buckets from wells or cisterns. And proper waste disposal. Don't make yourself laugh. The Victorians might have invented some fascinating if flawed sewer systems much later, but for now, chamber pots are typically emptied from windows into courtyards, below a practice that even in grander settings leaves a faint, acrid smell, particularly on warm days. You might try to mask it with herbs and perfumes, but the underlying reality remains. Your indoor life, regardless of status, revolves around an open, smoky hearth. This is your source of heat and your cooking fire. Consequently, your face, your coarse homespun woolen clothes, and the interior of your dwelling are perpetually stained with fine black soot. The air is always thick with a heavy acrid wood smoke that clings to everything, burning your eyes and tickling your throat. You simply adapt to the sensation, the smell becoming part of your identity. Furniture is basic and sparse, a few rough wooden stools, a simple table and straw mattresses for sleeping. Beds are often shared by multiple family members or even visitors out of sheer necessity, especially during cold nights. Personal privacy, as understood in your modern world, is almost non-existent for the vast majority. Everyone eats, sleeps, and passes their lives in extremely close quarters. This fosters incredibly strong familial bonds born of constant proximity, but also inevitably the friction and tension that arise from such ceaseless closeness. You learn to carve out your own small mental spaces, your own quiet moments in a world that offers very little physical solitude. It's a reality that day after day reminds you of your constant struggle for even the most basic comforts and a moment's peace. And this leads you directly to the next brutal reality, the monotonous, relentless struggle to simply feed yourself and your family. As you consider the persistent chill and ever-present dampness of your medieval dwelling, your thoughts inevitably turn to the constant gnawing reality of sustenance. The unchanging mainstay of a peasant family's diet, and thus your diet, is a watery pottage. Imagine a thin stew made from whatever meagre vegetables, often cabbage, onions, or root vegetables, could be spared from the harvest. This concoction is cooked endlessly in a heavy iron pot over an open flame. The aroma of boiled vegetables a constant familiar scent in your home. It's a dish designed for survival, not enjoyment, filling your stomach with bulk, but little else. You learn to eat it not for pleasure but for the energy it grudgingly provides. Precious scraps of salted pork, cured fish, or any other meats are rare luxuries. These are typically reserved for religious feast days, those fleeting moments of communal celebration that break the monotony. This means your average diet is overwhelmingly plant-based, profoundly monotonous, and critically often deficient in essential proteins and vitamins. You don't have a concept of vitamins, of course, but you feel the pervasive fatigue, the dullness that settles into your bones, the slow weakening of your body that comes from this lack. You rarely feel truly satisfied, just momentarily less hungry. Heavy, dense black bread, often made from coarser grains like barley or rye, constitutes another fundamental staple. It provides vital calories, the fuel for your endless toil, but offers little variety in taste or texture. Imagine a coarse, chewy substance, often hard enough to break a tooth if not properly soaked. It fills the stomach, yes, but rarely delights the palate. You learn to chew it slowly, making it last, knowing that each bite is precious. Your diets are acutely dependent on seasonal harvests. You experience periods of relative, though brief, plenty in late summer, when fresh vegetables and fruits are available. But these are quickly followed by long, lean times in winter, when reliance on basic preserved foods becomes critical to stave off starvation. You learn to savour those few weeks of fresh produce, knowing they are a fleeting memory against the long, hard months ahead. It's a natural rhythm of feast and near famine that governs your very metabolism. You as a woman bear the arduous and unceasing responsibility for all food preservation. This includes the physically demanding tasks of butchering animals, an unpleasant but necessary chore, smoking meats, curing fish with vast quantities of salt and fermenting vegetables. These are all vital processes for enduring the long, barren months between harvests. Your hands become raw from the salt, your eyes sting from the smoke, but you know these labours are non-negotiable for your family's survival. Your strength, both physical and mental, is constantly tested by these essential tasks. Chronic malnutrition is distressingly common, particularly among women and children. You see its manifestations everywhere in the widespread fatigue that saps energy from even the youngest in weakened immune systems that make everyone vulnerable to the slightest illness, and in the tragically deforming conditions like rickets. The effects of such conditions can be visibly deforming, twisting limbs and leaving lasting marks on bodies, a silent testament to years of insufficient nourishment. Meals for you are overwhelmingly bland, repetitive and unvaried. They're a far cry from the culinary experiences of your modern world. They serve purely as fuel for relentless toil, rather than a source of pleasure or social delight. The same earthy, boiled smell pervades every meal, a constant reminder of necessity over luxury. You eat to live, not live to eat. And this unvarnished reality, the constant struggle for basic sustenance, leads directly to another layer of discomfort, the unpleasant realities of hygiene and personal care that are an inescapable part of your daily life. Having just considered the sparse and often unappetizing meals that fuel your medieval life, you now turn your attention to the deeply unpleasant, yet utterly inescapable realities of personal hygiene. For managing your monthly cycles, you, like most women, rely on homemade cloth pads or rags. These are laboriously washed and reused, a task that adds yet another layer of demanding labour to your already full days. They offer minimal absorption and leak protection, often resulting in constant chafing discomfort and the ever-present threat of infection. Imagine living with that perpetual dampness, that faint, unpleasant odour, knowing there's little you can do to truly feel clean. Some women, you notice, resort to stuffing undergarments with less ideal materials like grass, hay, sheep's wool or moss. While these might offer some temporary solution, they frequently lead to painful skin irritation, rashes, and the unpleasant dampness of inadequate protection. It's a testament to the sheer lack of suitable alternatives that such crude methods are even considered. You learn to simply endure, to accept the discomfort as part of your female lot in life, rarely speaking of it. Bathing for the lower classes is a rare luxury. You might manage a full wash only a few times per year, perhaps on a major feast day, or after a particularly grueling harvest. These are supplemented by quick sponge baths, or merely wiping away the most obvious grime. Even when access to water is available, it's often polluted, and there's a widespread, often misguided belief that water can carry sickness into the body through open pores. This fear, however irrational by modern standards, perpetuates infrequent bathing, leaving a pervasive body odour that you simply grow accustomed to, for everyone smells the same. You'd think, wouldn't you, that a good scrub would be a top priority? Not in this era. Fleas, lice, and bedbugs are not just an occasional nuisance. They're pervasive and inescapable companions for all social classes. You'll find them in your straw mattress, clinging to your clothes, crawling through your hair. They cause constant itching, skin irritation, and contribute significantly to widespread disease transmission. Their tiny bites are a constant maddening annoyance, a low-level irritation that never truly goes away. You learn to scratch without thinking to ignore the tiny dark flecks on your clothes, because there's simply no escape. Washing clothes is a truly back-breaking, time-consuming process performed by hand. You heat water in a large pot over a fire, or carry your laundry to a river where you scrub clothes against a washboard or smooth stones, then wring them out with all your strength and hang them to dry. This immense labour means most families own only 1 or 2 sets of threadbare clothing perpetually damp from sweat and the elements, and smelling faintly of smoke-unwashed fabric, and the animals you share your home with. Your clothes are simply functional, serving their purpose until they fall apart. Even in grand castles, cleanliness standards fall far short of modern expectations. While wealthy noble women certainly have servants for heated baths and more regular laundering, they still lack running water or proper waste disposal. They too rely on chamber pots, which are then emptied from windows. You might see a noble woman carrying strong scented oils and herbs to mask the unmistakable odours, a stark illustration that even privilege cannot entirely escape the underlying realities of medieval sanitation. The flea fur provides a particularly telling example of this reality among the aristocracy. Imagine receiving a fur wrap as an aristocratic wedding gift intended specifically to attract fleas away from the body of the wearer. This starkly highlights the unavoidable and deeply unpleasant reality of pervasive pests even among the most privileged. It's a grotesque testament to the era's brutal hygiene, a reminder that even wealth could not buy true comfort from the omnipresent grime and biting insects. And with these persistent discomforts, you're now ready to face the endless physically demanding daily labour that is a woman's lot in this world. As the sun begins its ascent, casting its first pale light into your smoky dwelling, you're already well into your daily routine, because in this world, a woman's work is quite literally never done. From that first grey light of dawn until deep into the night, your life as a peasant woman revolves around an unending cycle of physically demanding chores. You stir the embers of the hearth fire, coaxing them back to life, then begin cooking meagre meals over the open flame. Hauling heavy buckets of water from the well or stream is a constant back-straining task, your arms aching, your calloused hands perpetually sore. And gathering firewood, a critical daily necessity for warmth and cooking, means countless trips into the nearby woods, your back bent under heavy loads. Your body is constantly aching with exertion, a dull throb that becomes a familiar part of your being. Beyond these relentless domestic duties, you often toil alongside your husband and other family members in the fields. You participate in every stage of the arduous agricultural cycle. Imagine planting seeds by hand, meticulously weeding rows under the blazing sun, then harvesting the crops with crude tools and finally threshing the grain, beating it to separate the precious kernels. This is literal back-breaking labour, often done under extreme weather conditions, essential to ensure your family's precarious survival. You are an indispensable part of the agrarian engine that keeps your tiny world turning. With no ready-to-wear clothing available, you are responsible for dressing your entire family from the youngest child to the oldest elder. This is a labour-intensive process that begins long before a needle touches fabric. It involves spinning raw wool or flax into yarn, a repetitive, finger-numbing task that seems to go on forever. Then, if you are fortunate enough to have access to a loom, you weave the yarn into fabric, a rhythmic but demanding process that can take days. Finally, you meticulously cut and sew garments by hand, often by the dim light of a flickering fire or candle. A single piece of clothing like a tunic or a simple gown can take weeks of dedicated finger-pricking labour. Your hands perpetually busy are a testament to this constant creation. You also bear the primary overwhelming burden of child rearing. This extends far beyond basic care. You're the nurse, the healer, the comforter. You tend to the sick with often crude herbal remedies, nursing family members through rampant diseases, all without the benefit of formal medical professionals. You learn to recognise the signs of illness, the best leaves for a fever, the right poultice for a wound. But despite your best efforts, there are moments of profound despair when a child or a loved one slips away and you feel the crushing weight of your helplessness. Even if you were born into the nobility, your days would be filled with a different kind of labour. Noble women are largely freed from the roughest manual toil by their retinue of servants. However, they still manage vast households, which can be as complex as a small village. This involves overseeing domestic staff, ensuring supplies are in order, and engaging in meticulous needlework that demonstrates both skill and status. Their days are filled with constant administrative and supervisory labour, ensuring the smooth running of the estate, managing budgets, and upholding the family social standing. It's less physically demanding, perhaps, but certainly not a life of leisure. For all women, regardless of status, childbearing is an expected and incredibly dangerous labour. It is a constant cycle of pregnancy, often leading to multiple difficult deliveries that physically ravage their bodies and frequently lead to early death. Yet it is culturally enforced as their primary duty, their purpose. It is a painful inevitability, a gamble with your life that you're expected to undertake repeatedly. And many women, particularly in the lower classes, engage in small cottage industries to supplement family income. You might make cheese from your few cows, brew ale from excess grain, spin textiles for sale at market, or sell surplus produce. This adds another layer of demanding labour to your already immense workload, each small venture a desperate attempt to stave off the persistent spectre of poverty. Every day is a test of your endurance, a quiet affirmation that your existence is defined by unceasing toil. With your body aching from the endless labour, your mind drifts to your childhood, or rather the stark reality of what childhood truly was in this medieval world. The concept of a carefree childhood as you understand it today scarcely existed. From the moment you could walk and talk, you were viewed not as an innocent child to be nurtured and protected, but as a miniature adult expected to contribute to the family economy. Your tiny hands were put to work surprisingly early, assisting with chores, carrying small loads, mimicking the actions of the adults around you. There was no distinct period of play or exploration separate from the demands of survival. Childhood was essentially an abrupt apprenticeship for adulthood. It was a time to learn critical survival skills and prepare for your mature roles and responsibilities, largely through tireless observation and imitation within the confines of your home and village. You absorbed knowledge through doing, not through formal instruction. You watched your mother spin, you learned to knead dough by feeling you memorized herbal remedies, by observing their preparation. Every day was a lesson, every chore a practical exam. For you as a girl, this meant an almost exclusive focus on domestic matters. From a very young age, you were indoctrinated into your prescribed place in society. You learnt the essential skills, cooking meagre meals, mending and sewing threadbare clothing, spinning fibres into yarn, and crucially caring for younger siblings and tending to the sick. Your education was hands-on, practical, and entirely centred on preparing you for your future role as a wife and mother, a silent expectation that shaped every moment of your formative years. The virtues relentlessly instilled in young girls were modesty, unquestioning obedience, and unwavering submission. These weren't merely polite suggestions. They were the cornerstones of your upbringing, cementing your subservient position in the God-ordained hierarchy of the sexes. This was reinforced by constant biblical stories and religious instruction that painted a grim picture of female weakness, emphasizing Eve's original sin and the need for women to be guided by rational men. You heard these messages in sermons, in daily proverbs, in the quiet expectations of your elders. They shaped your understanding of your own worth, or lack thereof. Formal education for the average peasant girl was vanishingly rare. Literacy rates for females were extremely low, hovering around a mere 5% even among the upper classes. For noble girls, education was not seen as a priority, beyond preparing them for their ultimate destiny, becoming wives and mothers. They might learn to read basic prayers or manage a household, but rarely were they encouraged to pursue intellectual curiosity or academic subjects that boys might explore. Your intellectual horizons were thus severely limited to the domestic sphere, a silent but profound confinement of the mind. While boys might attend parish schools or receive tutoring from a learned cleric, your schooling took place strictly within the confines of the home, under the tutelage of your mother, grandmother, and older sisters. You learned the wisdom of generations through direct example, passing down essential knowledge from one woman to the next. This shared female wisdom was practical and vital, but it also reinforced the boundaries of your world, preventing any wider exploration of knowledge or ideas. The onset of puberty and the inescapable spectre of arranged marriage often marked an abrupt and brutally decisive end to childhood. You were thrust into the weighty responsibilities of adulthood well before you were emotionally or physically ready. This transition was often accompanied by a profound sense of isolation, as the innocent camaraderie of girlhood gave way to the serious, often solitary duties of a wife and potential mother. Your youth, a brief and burdened period, faded quickly into a maturity defined by endless obligation. And as you step out of this brief training period of childhood, you enter the suffocating embrace of the social fabric, a dense web of unspoken rules and deeply ingrained beliefs that will profoundly shape your every interaction and your innermost thoughts. Transitioning from the physical realities of your daily life, you become acutely aware of the invisible yet profoundly restrictive social fabric that governs your existence. This is a world where every word, every gesture is scrutinized, and where your reputation is as fragile as thin ice. Medieval society enforces incredibly strict rules governing both verbal and non-verbal communication for women. Even a slight perceived misstep can carry severe and lasting social consequences, creating a constant state of vigilance within you. It's like walking a tightrope, knowing that one wrong move could send you plummeting. You're generally expected to be quiet, demure, and self-effacing. Imagine living in a world where silence is a virtue, where your voice is by societal design meant to be barely a whisper. Nuns, for example, are famously admonished to be seen and not heard, a powerful symbol of a broader pervasive societal expectation of female silence and submission. This expectation stifles individual expression, making you think twice, 3 times before uttering anything beyond the bare necessities. It's an oppressive quietness that seeps into your very being. Expressing strong opinions, challenging male authority, or even using an unapproved tone of voice is often seen as willfulness, pride, or nagging. You hear stories, cautionary tales of women who dared to speak out, risking accusations of being unnatural, or in extreme cases dangerous. Such perceived transgressions can lead to public shaming like the infamous scold's bridle, a truly brutal and humiliating public punishment. Imagine being paraded through town wearing an iron muzzle that presses down your tongue, a visible symbol of enforced silence and submission. It's a terrifying deterrent that keeps most women's words carefully controlled, their real thoughts locked away. A woman's beauty, rather than being celebrated, is frequently viewed with deep suspicion. It is regarded as a tool for leading men astray, a dangerous temptation. Thus, strict modesty in dress and the covering of one's hair are not just social norms but religious mandates. You learn to conform to adopt an oppressive uniform of virtue, ensuring that your appearance does not draw undue attention or suggest any hint of vanity. Your worth is tied to your ability to suppress your outward self, to blend into the background of pious conformity. You're expected to employ elaborate apologies and show unquestioning deference to men of higher status, and often to men of equal status, or even your own husband and sons. This constantly reinforces the pervasive cascading hierarchy in daily interactions, and subtly erodes your sense of self-worth. Every bow, every lowered gaze, every humble word is a reminder of your place. It's a constant performance of submission, and the weight of it can feel suffocating. This strict control over speech and self-expression often fosters a deep sense of isolation and internal frustration. You long for avenues to voice grievances, to express genuine emotion, or to find intellectual camaraderie. These outlets are severely limited, largely confined to trusted female networks, other women who understand your struggles, with whom you can share a quiet complaint or a knowing look when men aren't around. These stolen moments of genuine connection are precious, a small rebellion against the suffocating constraints. This intricate dance of communication and etiquette is merely one layer of the expected cultural performance. The deeper burden lies in the relentless expectation to embody an impossible ideal of virtue, a continuous, exhausting performance that governs every aspect of your public and private self. Following the tightrope walk of communication, you now face the crushing weight of cultural expectations and conduct. You're perpetually expected to embody an impossible ideal of virtue, to be obedient, chaste, modest, quiet, and diligently domestic. Your entire life in this societal blueprint is to be entirely dedicated to serving your father's brothers and husbands. This creates a suffocating pressure to conform, a feeling that your true self must always be hidden beneath a veneer of manufactured perfection. Imagine living under that constant unspoken demand to be flawless. Demonstrating outward piety through regular church attendance, fervent prayers, and meticulous adherence to religious doctrine is a crucial aspect of your social standing. It's not just personal faith, it's a public performance, a perceived safeguard of your virtue. You attend Mass, you cross yourself, you murmur prayers, all while knowing that these actions are being observed, silently judged. Your piety is a shield, a way to fend off suspicion and maintain your fragile reputation. Your reputation for a woman in medieval society is inextricably linked to your chastity and perceived purity. Any hint of flirtatiousness, real or imagined sexual impropriety, or deviation from the rigid ideal can irrevocably ruin you. This doesn't just affect you, it brings profound, lasting shame upon your entire family. The weight of this responsibility is immense. A whisper, a misplaced glance, a moment of perceived indiscretion can unravel years of careful conduct. For unmarried women, chastity is not merely a moral virtue. It is a literal form of social and economic currency. Your untouched state directly impacts your marriage prospects and the honour of your family. It is a fragile commodity, easily shattered, and once broken, almost impossible to repair. You walk through life knowing that this one aspect of your being holds immense power over your future, and that its loss means ruin. The way a woman dresses, moves, and conducts herself in public is meticulously scrutinized as a direct reflection of her inner moral state. Imagine every gesture, every tilt of your head being subject to severe judgment and condemnation for any perceived looseness, vanity, or immodesty. You learn to move with careful precision to avoid drawing attention, to blend into the quiet backdrop of female conformity. Your appearance becomes a constant visible barometer of your moral standing. The diligent management of a household, the tireless care of children, and evident skill in domestic crafts are not merely chores. They're continuous public demonstrations of a woman's competence and her unwavering adherence to her prescribed restrictive role. Your proficiency with a needle, your ability to stretch meagre rations into a meal, your children's good behaviour, these are all judged, and they contribute to your standing in the community. It's a never-ending performance played out on the stage of your daily life. Medieval women like you are forced to perform a constant, exhausting balancing act. You're expected to be an attractive, fertile wife and mother capable of producing heirs and managing a household. Simultaneously, you must demonstrate absolute moral and sexual purity, a seemingly impossible bind that often fosters deep internal conflict and external vulnerability. You must be desirable, yet chaste, productive, yet demure. This paradox is a heavy burden, creating an underlying tension in every aspect of your life. And as you navigate these social expectations, you realize that even your deepest spiritual beliefs and the superstitions that permeate your world often serve to reinforce these very same brutal limitations, particularly concerning your innate nature as a woman. Beyond the rigid social conduct, you encounter the profound influence of spiritual frameworks and pervasive superstition, which often shape your perception of yourself and others. Dominant Christian doctrine, the very bedrock of this society, profoundly shapes attitudes towards women. You're cast as inherently sinful and morally weak, forever tainted by Eve's original transgression in the Garden of Eden. This pervasive belief justifies your perpetual subordination to rational men, framing it not just as a social order but as a divine one. You hear it in sermons, in the pronouncements of priests, and it seeps into the everyday language and expectations, leaving you with a quiet internal struggle against this imposed legacy. Female sexuality in particular is something to be aggressively stifled and strictly controlled. It is universally viewed as a dangerous source of temptation, a direct threat to male spiritual purity. This fosters a deep-seated fear of female desire, a belief that it must be contained and suppressed lest it lead men astray. You learn to hide your own desires, to internalize the message that your natural urges are somehow inherently problematic. It's a heavy burden, this feeling, that a part of your very being is considered a spiritual peril. Beyond formal religion, widespread folk beliefs and superstitions permeate daily life. Imagine a world where every unusual event, every crop failure, every illness is attributed not to natural causes but to unseen forces. This often leads to women, particularly those with healing knowledge, those who know the properties of herbs and roots, or those with unusual habits or appearances being tragically blamed for communal misfortunes. A bad harvest. It might be the old woman in the woods, a child's sickness. Perhaps the midwife cursed them. Neighbours turn against each other. Suspicion breeding fear, turning acts of kindness or wisdom into perceived dark arts. For some women, however, a religious vocation offers a rare alternative to a forced marriage or a life of endless toil. Becoming a nun can provide a chance for intellectual and spiritual life, a place where you might learn to read and write, to study scripture. But even this escape comes with its own set of rigid confinements. You would live under strict daily schedules, often take vows of silence, and endure strict isolating enclosure within convent walls. It's a different kind of confinement perhaps, but confinement nonetheless, a trade-off of one cage for another. Consider the anchoress like Julian of Norwich, a woman who voluntarily chose an extreme radical seclusion. You can barely imagine it being literally walled into a small cell attached to a church for life. This living death paradoxically offers a form of spiritual freedom from worldly demands, a chance for profound contemplation and communion with God, but at the cost of all physical liberty. It is a choice made from deep spiritual conviction, but it starkly illustrates the lengths to which some women would go to find agency or meaning in a world that otherwise offered them so little. Women who possess knowledge of herbal remedies or assist in childbirth, often the most vital figures in a village's health, are particularly vulnerable to accusations of sorcery if a patient dies. Their wisdom is tragically reinterpreted as dark arts, or collusion with the devil, turning their caring hands into objects of fear and suspicion. Imagine your good intentions, your knowledge being twisted into a charge that could lead to your horrific death. And while practical hygiene is dire, ritualistic purity is rigidly enforced through religious doctrine, particularly concerning female bodies during menstruation or after childbirth. These periods are often associated with uncleanliness, further isolating women and reinforcing their perceived moral or physical defilement. You are taught to avoid certain activities, certain places during these times, further solidifying the sense that your natural bodily functions are somehow inherently impure. This constant reinforcing of female weakness, of your inherent sinfulness, prepares you for the next profound aspect of your life, the pragmatic alliances of love, marriage, and family. As you navigate the spiritual strictures, you inevitably turn to the deeply practical, often unromantic realities of love, marriage, and family life. For you, marriage is predominantly a pragmatic arrangement, a cold calculation designed to strengthen family alliances, increase economic stability, and above all, produce heirs. Imagine entering a lifelong union with little to no input on your part. This is particularly true among the nobility, where young brides are often mere pawns in a larger game of power and property. Your feelings in the matter are quite frankly irrelevant. Early betrothals are common. While the legal minimum age for marriage might be low 12, for girls a shocking concept by modern standards, betrothals can begin much earlier. Alarmingly, young girls, particularly in aristocratic circles, are married off to much older men for political or financial gain. You witness their terror and trepidation, a quiet despair that goes unspoken, as they're handed over to strangers, their childhood abruptly terminated for the sake of family advancement. A wedding ceremony, often simple for commoners, formally marks the definitive transfer of a woman's authority from her father to her new husband. It is a legal and social watershed. Your identity and legal standing are irrevocably subsumed into his. Your prior life, in essence, ceases to exist as an independent entity. You're now his a possession, with your new role and duties clearly defined, leaving little room for individual expression or desire. Moving into your husband's household, especially if it means leaving your birth family behind, presents an immediate, often overwhelming challenge. You must quickly adapt to an unfamiliar domestic hierarchy, learning to navigate complex relations with in-laws, some of whom may resent your presence. You must meticulously establish your own precarious place in the pecking order, proving your worth and competence to your new family. It's a constant test, often conducted under critical eyes, and any misstep can be met with harsh judgment. The pressure to bear children, especially male heirs, is immense. It defines a wife's worth, her very purpose. Failure to deliver sons brings profound shame and potential repudiation even for queens. You see this burden weighing heavily on every married woman, a constant anxiety that haunts their waking and sleeping hours. Your body is seen as an instrument for dynasty, not your own, and its fruitfulness is paramount. True romantic love, as you might conceive it, is overwhelmingly confined to courtly poetry and fictional narratives. It is rarely a factor in the harsh realities of medieval marriage, which is a pragmatic contract and a social duty rather than an emotional union. Many hearts, you realize, remain unfulfilled, silently yearning for a connection that their arranged union simply cannot provide. Affection may grow over time, born of shared struggle and companionship, but it is rarely the foundation. And then there are the severe consequences for transgression. Adultery, even if committed by the husband, is universally seen as the wife's failure, a moral failing on her part regardless of the circumstances. It is met with brutal and humiliating public punishments. Imagine being stripped to the waist, whipped, dunked repeatedly in cold water, or locked in stocks while jeering crowds hurl rotten food and insults. Such a punishment, a public spectacle of degradation, often ends in complete social ruin or even death. This threat hangs over you, a constant reminder of the rigid moral code and the ultimate power of male authority. This intimate connection to family honour now extends to the broader societal concept of clan identity, where your individual actions carry profound collective shame and the risk of absolute reputational ruin. As you navigate the intimate yet rigid structures of marriage, you become acutely aware of a pervasive force that overshadows your entire existence. the weight of clan identity, or what some cultures of the time might call the I.E. Individualism as you understand it is largely suppressed in favour of the collective. Your family or clan serves as the primary source of your identity, your reputation and your social standing. This fundamentally erodes your personal agency, making you realise that your very self is defined by the group you belong to, rather than by your own merits or desires. Your actions, particularly those perceived as transgressions against moral or social codes, carry severe and far-reaching reputational impacts on your entire lineage, not just yourself. A scandal involving one woman can leave a stain that spans generations, affecting marriage prospects, business dealings, and the overall standing of the family. The burden of maintaining family honour and avoiding scandal is a paramount societal concern, a constant pressure that rests heavily on your shoulders. You as a woman, through your impeccable virtue and faultless conduct, are seen as absolutely key to upholding this fragile honour. It is an immense, unspoken weight that you carry every single day. Your behaviour reflects directly on your father, your brothers, your husband, and your children. You're constantly aware that any misstep could bring disgrace upon all of them, a chilling thought that enforces rigid self-control. The constant threat of public shaming, ostracism, and the loss of face is a powerfully effective and deeply brutal tool of social control. It ensures rigid conformity to strict societal expectations of female behaviour. Imagine the fear of being pointed at, whispered about, and shunned by your entire community. This fear acts as a powerful deterrent, forcing you to toe the line even when every fibre of your being rebels against it. A ruined reputation, often due to accusations of infidelity or even just inappropriate flirtation, can lead to abandonment and complete social ruin. It renders you utterly disposable in the eyes of society, your future bleak and hopeless. You might be cast out, left to fend for yourself with no resources, no family, and no hope of redemption. It's a terrifying prospect, a social death that often precedes a literal one. Consider the harrowing story of Margarita of Flanders, a noblewoman who suffered immense personal torment. She was abducted and imprisoned by her own husband, yet by feudal law and the prevailing concept of male honour, she was eventually forced to return to him. Her personal suffering was secondary to the male-defined honour of families and the political manoeuvring of men. This starkly showcases the brutal reality of women as property, their feelings and well-being utterly disregarded in the pursuit of larger patriarchal goals. Any perceived marital failure, even those caused by an abusive husband, is typically framed as the wife's failure to maintain household harmony or control her own behaviour. This leads to collective judgment and blame against her, reinforcing her inescapable vulnerability. You as the wife are expected to keep the peace, to manage your husband's temperament, to ensure domestic tranquility, even if it means enduring abuse in silence. The responsibility for a harmonious household falls squarely on your shoulders regardless of the husband's actions. This constant pressure to uphold a perfect facade, to swallow your own suffering for the sake of family honour, leads directly to the unyielding power hierarchy that governs your life, where absolute male authority leaves little room for individual rights or dissent. As you internalise the profound weight of family honour, you're acutely aware of the unyielding power hierarchy that governs every facet of your medieval existence. Unquestioning obedience is not merely encouraged. It is demanded at every level of society, from the lowest peasant like yourself to the highest noble in their castle. It's a strict hierarchy cascading down from the king or the lord through the male head of the household to dictate the lives of all women and children. You're simply a cog in this vast ancient machine, expected to perform your function without question. Within the domestic sphere, your husband holds absolute legally sanctioned authority over you, his wife. This isn't just a cultural norm, it's explicitly reinforced by religious doctrine. Imagine a legal text like the 15th century Liber Extra, which decrees quite chillingly that a man may chastise his wife and beat her for her own correction, for she belongs to him. This formalizes domestic brutality, giving your husband not just permission, but a legal and moral right to physically punish you. There is no appeal, no escape. His will often serves as immediate unchallengeable law within your home, with virtually no external legal recourse available for you if you experience physical or psychological abuse. You as a woman possess virtually no autonomy over your own body, your mind, or your destiny. Your life path is entirely dictated by the men in your life, your father, your husband, your sons. You exist under constant oppressive male surveillance, trapped in a cycle of submission that begins at birth and ends only with death. Every decision, every move is subject to their approval, their judgment, or their direct command. Your thoughts, your feelings, your desires are secondary, if they are even considered at all. The medieval church, with its omnipresent teachings, provides a profound ideological justification for this female subordination and control. Its doctrines on Eve's original sin and women's inherent moral weakness permeate every aspect of your existence. You hear it in sermons, in daily conversations, in the very structure of society. This religious sanction makes the male dominance not just a social convention, but a divinely ordained order, making resistance seem like a challenge to God himself. Even highborn women, though they might serve as regents or manage vast estates, operate within an unstable system where their authority is often temporarily symbolic, or ruthlessly subject to male manipulation and political intrigue. Take Queen Isabeau, who famously managed the French court during her husband's illness. Her power, immense as it seemed, was constantly precarious, dependent on male approval, and susceptible to being undermined by ambitious male relatives. Their power is borrowed, never truly their own. You are in essence chattel possessions belonging to men. The harrowing account of King Louis II siding with an abusive husband over his own daughter, Margarita, whose plight you recalled earlier, starkly highlights this systemic lack of protection for women regardless of their status. Even a king's daughter could be forced back into an abusive marriage because her well-being was secondary to the legal and property rights of her husband. It's a chilling reminder that your individual suffering means little in the face of established law and patriarchal power. You exist under the perpetual watchful eye of male authority figures. They are swift and merciless to punish any perceived transgressions, creating a chilling climate of fear and self-censorship that extends even to your very thoughts. You learn to guard your expressions, to hide your true feelings, to conform not just in action, but in your innermost being to avoid their wrath. This constant scrutiny and the pervasive threat of punishment lead directly to the brutal legal and enforcement mechanisms that underpin this society where your lack of rights leaves you utterly exposed. Having grasped the pervasive male authority, you now face the stark realities of legal and enforcement mechanisms which offer little to no recourse for you as a woman. Within the domestic sphere, your husband's will often serves as immediate unchallengeable law. Imagine living in a home where any physical or psychological abuse you endure has virtually no external legal recourse. You cannot press charges against an abuser. You cannot request a separation without extreme difficulty and rare male-dominated approval, nor can you seek justice in your own name. You're utterly exposed and vulnerable, trapped within the confines of your own household, with no external avenue for escape or redress. Punishments for women, even for seemingly petty offences like scolding or nagging, are frequently public and deeply humiliating. These are meticulously designed not just to punish the individual, but to enforce social norms through widespread shame and terror. You might witness a woman in the stocks pelted with rotten vegetables simply for having a sharp tongue. These spectacles are designed to be a chilling deterrent, a vivid reminder to all women of the consequences of stepping out of line of daring to voice an opinion too loudly. Accused adulteresses face particularly brutal and humiliating public punishments. Imagine the sheer terror and degradation stripped to the waist, whipped through the streets repeatedly dunked in icy water, or locked in stocks while jeering crowds hurl rotten food and insults. Such a punishment is designed to utterly destroy a woman's reputation and lead to complete social ruin. You know that even a false accusation driven by spite or jealousy could spell your utter destruction, leaving you without a home family or hope. Your lack of legal rights is frighteningly complete. As a woman, you generally cannot initiate legal proceedings in your own name. If you're abused, abandoned, or cheated, your recourse is almost non-existent. You're dependent on a male relative to act on your behalf, and if no one is willing or able, you are left utterly exposed. This powerlessness in the face of the law means that justice for you is a rare and often unattainable concept. The concept of marital rape simply did not exist within the medieval mindset. Marriage grants a husband unfettered sexual access to his wife's body. Her consent is deemed irrelevant. Any complaint you might voice about unwanted sexual relations is seen not as a legitimate grievance, but as provoking his anger, or even an invitation to further violence. Your body is his property, and this legal framework provides no protection for your bodily autonomy within the confines of marriage. Women who practice medicine or midwifery despite their vital community role often face legal persecution and suspicion. Take the case of Jacqueline Felicia de Almeida, who in the 14th century was excommunicated and barred from practice despite patient testimony and clear skill. Her knowledge, her ability to heal was seen as a threat to male-dominated medical authority, leading to her unjust condemnation. And then the most grotesque of all witchcraft trials. These are truly sham affairs where confessions are brutally extracted under torture, and any perceived blemish or mole the devil's mark is used as proof of unholy alliance. The consequence is horrific public executions, beheading, hanging, or most terrifyingly burning at the stake before a jeering crowd. These trials serve as a terrifying warning designed to crush any form of independent female thought. Any deviation from the norm making every woman vulnerable to the slightest accusation, the smallest hint of difference. This fear of arbitrary power leads to the ultimate penalty, the shadow of death and honour as societal control. As you contemplate the terrifying reach of medieval law, you realize that the shadow of death and honour is wielded as the ultimate tool of societal control, an inescapable penalty for perceived transgression. Death in this world is not merely a physical event. It is a concept deeply interwoven with honour and social order, serving as the final, absolute punishment for defiance. Imagine living with the constant awareness that your very life can be forfeit for a breach of societal norms, for a perceived stain on your family's name, or simply for being deemed too independent. You are by societal expectation largely expected to calmly accept your brutal fate, even in the face of injustice, abuse, or impending death. There is little societal expectation for resistance or defiance from women. Instead, a pervasive quiet resignation is the norm born of generations of understanding your place. To fight back often means to invite swifter, more brutal punishment. Your acquiescence in a twisted way is seen as upholding the very honour that condemns you. Principles of honour and shame are not abstract concepts. They are wielded as direct tools of state or lordly power, leading to immediate punitive actions, legal mandates, and state-sanctioned coercion. These often culminate in execution, or complete societal ostracization for perceived failures in upholding honour, especially for women. Your honour is not your own, it is a public commodity meticulously guarded and brutally enforced by those in power. For accused witches, the end is particularly horrific death by burning at the stake before a jeering mob. This public execution serves as a potent and terrifying reminder of the consequences of defying cultural norms, appearing too independent, or being perceived as a threat to male authority. The smell of smoke, the cries of the accused, The grim satisfaction of the crowd, these spectacles are designed to etch fear into the hearts of all who witness them, especially women, reinforcing the absolute danger of stepping beyond societal boundaries. In cases of rape, especially of an unmarried virgin, the best and often only outcome for the victim is for her attacker to be pressured into marrying her. This horrifying solution is because he has ruined her, destroying her marriage prospects and family honour. He is thus forced to atone by taking her as his wife, her feelings in the matter completely irrelevant. Imagine being forced to marry the man who violated you, the very person who brought you such trauma, all because society offers no other way for you to regain some semblance of a future. Your bodily autonomy and emotional well-being are secondary to the patriarchal obsession with virginity and honour. For queens, the pressure to deliver a male heir is immense, a stark reminder that even the highest-ranking women are disposable instruments in the quest for dynastic perpetuation. Failure to produce a son can result in being cast aside in favour of a more fertile consort, echoing the chilling fates of queens like those in the Tudor era. Even your royal blood cannot protect you from this fundamental societal expectation. Your purpose is to secure the male line, and if you fail, you are replaced. The public nature of executions for crimes like witchcraft or adultery serves not only as punishment, but also as a macabre, terrifying spectacle. It is designed to reinforce the dangers of deviance and the absolute unyielding power of the authorities over women's bodies and lives. You witness these events, and they become ingrained in your memory, a silent terror that shapes your every cautious move, ensuring conformity. Yet despite these overwhelming forces, you begin to observe subtle, profound forms of resistance and resilience, ways in which women find agency amidst such pervasive oppression. Despite the crushing weight of societal expectations and the constant threat of brutal enforcement, you begin to perceive the quiet, powerful forms of resistance and resilience employed by medieval women. One shining beacon of intellectual defiance is Christine de Pizan, one of Europe's first professional female authors. Imagine a woman centuries ahead of her time daring to challenge the rampant misogyny embedded in male scholarly works. You see her not just as a writer, but as a warrior supporting her family through her writing and arguing passionately for women's moral and intellectual equality. It's a truly revolutionary act in a world that sought to silence female voices. Her most famous work, The Book of the City of Ladies, is a profound act of rebellion. In it, she systematically dismantles pervasive notions of female inferiority, meticulously building a counter-narrative. She celebrates the accomplishments of great women throughout history, from pagan goddesses to Christian saints, from warriors to scholars, proving with careful logic that women are capable, intelligent, and virtuous. Imagine her boldly imagining a utopian city populated and governed entirely by women, a safe haven where their true potential could flourish. It's a truly revolutionary intellectual act, a blueprint for a world that would not exist for centuries, yet it provides a powerful, quiet hope. Beyond the literary sphere, women like Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century abbess, and St. Catherine of Siena, a 14th century Dominican tertiary, found an unexpected oasis of learning and spiritual authority in monastic life. You observe how they carved out spaces for themselves, making pioneering contributions to theology, medicine, and even admonishing popes. These women channeled their deep faith into active influence, demonstrating that spiritual devotion could be a path to power and intellectual freedom, a stark contrast to the domestic confinement of most women. They used their religious authority to speak truths that would otherwise be silenced. But beyond these famous figures, you recognize the countless ordinary women who practiced daily quiet acts of resilience and solidarity. You see them supporting each other through childbirth, forming informal networks to care for each other's children when illness struck, and sharing vital, often illicit knowledge. Imagine women secretly exchanging recipes for herbal remedies to ease pain, or even methods of contraception defying the Church's strictures. These are not grand gestures of rebellion, but quiet, profound acts of mutual aid, creating pockets of agency and defiance in a world that offered little official support. Mothers in particular meticulously taught their daughters the practical skills and the nuanced social navigation required to survive their lot in life. From managing a frugal household to understanding the treacherous waters of marriage and family politics, this was an education in endurance. You observe how they arm the next generation with tools to endure, if not overcome, their hardships. It's a legacy of quiet strength passed from mother to daughter, an act of love and defiance. Even if overtly defying the system was impossible or too dangerous, women found subtle, ingenious ways to exert agency. This might be through the strong bonds of community support they forged through the stories they told to their children, or simply by maintaining an indomitable inner strength and dignity in the face of unrelenting oppression. You see it in their eyes, in their quiet determination, in the way they continue to nurture life despite constant hardship. Amidst all the toil and hardship, you also observe women finding fleeting moments of levity and laughter. They share gossip and complaints, finding solace in the bonds of female friendship and family. These are not grand escapes, but small, precious moments, a shared joke while mending clothes, a knowing glance over a difficult meal, a collective sigh of exhaustion that carries shared understanding. These micro-narratives of connection allow them to persevere, creating a quiet strength that permeates their brutal existence, reminding you that even in the darkest times, the human spirit finds ways to connect and endure. This resilience, however, often comes despite the immense vulnerability faced by unattached women and societal outcasts whose lives are truly discarded. While some women found subtle ways to resist, you're always aware of the deep societal suspicion and profound vulnerability faced by those who lacked male protection. Unmarried women, particularly those without male relatives to defend them, like widows, without adult sons or older single women, were viewed with immense suspicion. They frequently became convenient scapegoats for community misfortunes. Imagine a failed harvest or a widespread illness, and suddenly the old woman living alone on the edge of the village is accused of witchcraft or other forms of deviance. It's a terrifying reality where isolation can quickly turn into a death sentence. Without the crucial protection and control of a male relative or husband unattached, females were seen as dangerous, unnatural liabilities. Society provided no formal social safety nets for them, leaving them precariously vulnerable. You observe them struggling, often impoverished, forced to rely on sporadic charity or their own desperate wits. Their existence is a constant tightrope walk with no safety net below. They're in essence utterly disposable in a system that valued women primarily for their relationships to men. Those who resorted to prostitution to survive lived on the absolute margins of society. They were a grim necessity in bustling urban centres often confined to designated red-light districts like Southwark in London, a place of dubious repute you might hear whispered about. Yet if these women were caught plying their trade outside those boundaries, they faced severe fines and brutal public humiliation in the stocks. Imagine being paraded through the streets, your face covered in shame while crowds jeered and threw refuse. Their lives were considered utterly cheap and disposable, their existence a testament to the desperate choices forced upon women with no other means. For the most desperate women, survival often meant resorting to begging or vagrancy, a life outside any established community. This exposed them to swift and brutal treatment at the hands of the law. Unattached women, particularly those wandering without a clear male guardian or familial ties, were perceived as a threat to social order, a source of potential chaos. They were subject to merciless flogging, branding, or even mutilation for what might seem to you like minor transgressions. The roads and forests offered no sanctuary, only further peril, and the constant threat of state violence. You learn quickly that to be outside the male-controlled family unit is to be outside the law's protection and often its mercy. Even women who had been married faced a grim future if widowed without adult sons or family support. Often impoverished, they became utterly reliant on the grudging charity of others. You might see them reduced to living in cramped, cold conditions, frequently seen as nothing more than a burden by relatives who barely had enough to feed themselves. Their past contributions, their years of labour and childbearing often counted for little once their male protector was gone. It was a bleak, often lonely existence. For some unmarriageable or socially undesirable noblewomen, the convent or even an anchoress's cell was presented as a better option. While it offered refuge and a veneer of respectability, preventing them from becoming a burden or a social embarrassment to their families, it still constituted a lifetime of permanent, often solitary confinement. This choice was often no choice at all, merely a less brutal form of imprisonment within the rigid societal structure. You'd think, wouldn't you, that a noblewoman would have more freedom, but no, even their options were tightly controlled, just with different trappings. With little or no independent legal standing, these marginalised women had virtually no recourse against exploitation, violence, or false accusations. Their lives were incredibly precarious, constantly teetering on the edge of utter destitution and danger. This often led to agonising, desperate choices, each decision a gamble with their very survival. Their struggles, largely invisible to history, are a stark reminder of the depth of brutality faced by those outside the protective, albeit oppressive, male-dominated social fabric. As you consider the precariousness of unattached women, you're left with the chilling understanding of what it truly means to be discarded by a society that values structure and male protection above all else. For these women, life is not just hard. It is a relentless, exhausting fight for every single breath, every scrap of sustenance. Imagine the profound, aching loneliness that accompanies constant social suspicion. Every averted gaze, every door closed in your face, every whisper that follows you in the street is a constant reinforcement of your unwelcome status. You're an anomaly, a threat, a burden, and this judgment shapes your world, making every interaction a test, every moment fraught with potential peril. The sheer desperation for food and shelter becomes a consuming force. For those who resorted to begging, it's not a choice but a last resort and utter humiliation. You sit or stand for hours perhaps, with a gaunt child clutching your threadbare skirt, holding out a trembling hand, enduring the indifference, the disdain, or the occasional grudging coin tossed your way. The pangs of hunger are not just a discomfort. They are a constant companion, a dull ache that never truly leaves you even in sleep. You eat what you can find, often spoiled scraps, or go without knowing that starvation is always a breath away. For vagrant women, the elements become their constant, merciless adversary. You try to find shelter in abandoned barns under bridges, or simply huddle against a wall in a town alley. The biting cold of winter, the relentless rain, the sweltering heat of summer. These are not just weather, they are direct threats to your survival. Without a home, without a roof, your body is perpetually exposed, your health constantly deteriorating. You learn to recognize the subtle signs of illness in yourself, knowing that there is no one to care for you, no one to offer a warm blanket or a healing draught. Your cough might turn to consumption, a minor wound to a fatal infection, all without the comfort of a kind hand. The threat of violence for these women is omnipresent. Without male protection, you are utterly vulnerable to exploitation, robbery, and physical assault. There is no one to defend you, no law enforcement interested in your plight. You learn to walk warily, to trust no one, to keep your eyes down, to make yourself as invisible as possible. The fear is a cold knot in your stomach, a constant reminder of your precarious existence. You are literally fair game, and the injustice of it is a profound, crushing weight. Even the small kindnesses shown by strangers are often tinged with pity or a fleeting sense of moral obligation, rather than genuine empathy. You are always aware of the social distance, the chasm that separates you from respectable society. This constant reinforcement of your outcast status can lead to profound psychological impacts, a deep sense of shame, of worthlessness, a quiet rage at the unfairness of it all. You are, in essence, an unperson stripped of dignity and humanity by the very society that created your desperate circumstances. You might think, wouldn't you, that society would offer some basic care, but no, a medieval safety net is largely a spider's web for those caught in its threads. And perhaps most chillingly, the lives of these women are largely unrecorded, forgotten by history. No one writes novels about your kind, no one carves your name in stone, no one remembers your struggles. You're a silent statistic, a nameless face in the vast brutal tapestry of medieval suffering. Your existence, though filled with unimaginable hardship, leaves no lasting mark on the grand narratives of the time. You simply vanish, another life consumed by the indifference of a rigid, unforgiving world. Your vulnerability is absolute, your plight often invisible, a stark testament to the ultimate brutality of a society that offers no place and no mercy to those who fall through its cracks. This ever-present pressure in turn has stark economic implications, shaping not just your daily life, but the very generational prospects for women in this society. Following the subtle yet pervasive social control, you now reflect on the profound economic implications for women in this brutal medieval world, particularly how wealth and property, or the crushing lack thereof, shape every aspect of your life and future. For you as a woman, inheritance rights are often severely limited. Primogeniture, the system by which the eldest son inherits all or the vast majority of family property, is the prevailing norm. This means that daughters are typically excluded from direct inheritance of land or significant wealth, reinforcing their economic dependence on male relatives. Imagine seeing your family's assets pass entirely to your brothers, leaving you with little to nothing of your own. A woman's primary economic contribution beyond her grueling labour is often her dowry. This is the property or money that she brings to her marriage, and it is a crucial negotiation point. A larger dowry can secure a more advantageous marriage, linking you to a wealthier or more influential family. However, this also means that if your family is poor, your marriage prospects are severely diminished, and you might be forced into a less desirable union, or remain unmarried, a fate often fraught with peril. Your worth in many ways is literally tied to the contents of your hope chest. Upon marriage, a woman's dowry typically comes under the legal control of her husband. While it is theoretically meant to provide for her and her children in the event of his death in practice, he has almost complete control over its use during his lifetime. This leaves you with little independent financial power, unable to make significant economic decisions without your husband's consent. Your financial identity, like your legal one, is largely subsumed into his. It's a precarious situation, as your future security rests entirely on his prudence or lack thereof. For peasant women, any small savings or assets are constantly at risk. Crop failures, heavy taxes, or unexpected illnesses can wipe out what little a family has accumulated, forcing them deeper into debt or utter destitution. You live with the constant anxiety of economic collapse, knowing that a single misfortune can erase years of backbreaking labour. There are no retirement funds, no insurance, no government subsidies. Your entire life is a relentless cycle of production and consumption, with almost no surplus for security. Widowhood, as you've observed, brings profound economic vulnerability. While a widow might have a right to dower a portion of her deceased husband's land or income for her lifetime, this is often contested by male relatives or simply insufficient for her needs. Without a male heir to manage her affairs, she often struggles to retain control of even these meagre assets. Imagine having spent your entire life working a farm only to find yourself fighting, just to keep a roof over your head after your husband dies. You'd think there'd be more respect for a lifetime of contribution, but respect doesn't pay the bills. In urban areas, women might participate in guilds, particularly in crafts like brewing, spinning, or weaving. However, their opportunities are often limited, and they rarely achieve the same status or economic independence as their male counterparts. While a woman might run a small shop or work alongside her husband, the ultimate control and ownership often remain firmly in male hands. This economic marginalization means that true financial autonomy is an incredibly rare privilege for women across all social strata, a constant reminder of the limits placed upon your ambition and capabilities. This harsh economic reality, so deeply intertwined with social hierarchy, continually shapes the contours of your arduous daily existence. Having explored the overarching economic structures that trap you, let's return to the intensely personal day-to-day physical discomforts that are your constant companions. Imagine the sheer cold you endure. Your medieval dwelling, even with its thick wattle and daub walls, offers little real insulation against the biting winds and perpetual dampness that seep into every corner. Good luck finding central heating or thermal underwear in this century. Your primary warmth comes from the smoky hearth, which while welcome leaves you constantly smelling of soot and wood smoke. You stack layers of rough homespun wool, but the chill still penetrates to your bones, making your joints ache, particularly in the long, dark winters. You live with a perpetual slight shiver, a constant awareness of the cold that never truly leaves you. Sleep, too, is rarely truly restful. Your straw mattress, while better than the hard-packed earth, quickly becomes compacted, lumpy, and often infested with fleas and bedbugs. Imagine lying awake in the dark, feeling the incessant itching, hearing the rustling of mice in the thatch above and the low snorts of the animals sharing your dwelling. Your sleep is often broken shallow and leaves you feeling barely rested, merely less exhausted, ready to face another day of endless toil. You'd prefer not to know what else might be living in those straw beds, but you suspect plenty. The raw physical demands of your labour mean your body is in a constant state of ache. Whether you're hauling heavy buckets of water from the well, bending over the soil for hours, planting or weeding, or endlessly scrubbing clothes by hand, your muscles are perpetually strained, your joints stiff. You develop calluses on your hands, your back often twinges, and your feet are constantly sore from rough ill-fitting shoes or going barefoot. You live with a persistent low-grade pain that you simply accept as part of being alive, a chronic companion. Your body is a tool and you work it until it protests, then you work it some more. Even simple tasks are arduous without modern conveniences. Imagine cooking every meal over an open flame, the smoke stinging your eyes, the heat intense in summer, the chill still present in winter. There are no readily available pots, pans, or utensils. Your cooking is basic, relying on a few heavy iron pots. Food preparation is a time-consuming, labour-intensive affair, requiring endless chopping, grinding, and stirring. Every meal is a victory won through sheer physical effort. Personal hygiene, as you've already touched upon, is a profound source of discomfort. The infrequent bathing, the pervasive smell of unwashed bodies, the constant presence of vermin. These are not just minor inconveniences. They contribute to a persistent low-level irritation and a constant awareness of grime. You learn to accept the faint, pervasive odour that clings to you and everyone around you, the dull itch of fleas, the feeling of perpetually grimy skin. You might try to mask it with dried herbs, but the underlying reality of an unsanitary existence is always there. The sensory world itself is often harsh. The thick, sour air of overcrowded villages clings to your skin, heavy with the smell of unwashed bodies, animal droppings, and what might possibly be raw sewage. Even if you're a noblewoman, the faint, acrid smell from chamber pots emptied from windows is a constant reminder of the lack of modern sanitation. The ubiquitous smell of wood smoke, while comforting in its association with warmth, is also a constant irritant to your lungs and eyes. Your environment is a symphony of discomforts, a relentless assault on your senses. This omnipresent physical hardship, the very texture of your daily existence, further underscores the profound emotional and psychological burdens women carried within the strictures of medieval society, burdens that often went unacknowledged. Beyond the persistent physical discomforts, you now turn your attention to the profound emotional and psychological burdens that weigh heavily on medieval women, often unacknowledged by society. Imagine the silent grief that becomes a constant companion. With alarmingly high infant and child mortality rates, you as a mother live with the perpetual fear of losing your children. The heartbreak of burying child after child, knowing that they could be claimed indiscriminately by disease or accident, leaves an indelible scar on your soul. You learn to steel yourself to love fiercely, yet conditionally, because the next morning is never guaranteed for a fragile young life. It's a profound, quiet sorrow that many women carry throughout their lives. The constant pressure to produce male heirs is another immense psychological burden. Your worth as a wife and a woman is inextricably linked to your ability to bear sons. If you fail to do so, you face the silent or overt disapproval of your husband and his family, the threat of repudiation, or if you are a queen, the chilling possibility of being cast aside. This anxiety can consume you, making every pregnancy a desperate hope, every birth a moment of intense, terrifying scrutiny. Your body is not truly your own. It is a vessel for dynastic continuation, and its failures are your failures. For many women, the lack of agency, the inability to control their own destiny, leads to a deep sense of frustration and helplessness. From arranged marriages to predetermined social roles, your life path is chosen for you often with little regard for your personal desires or ambitions. This constant suppression of self, this feeling of being a pawn in a larger game, can lead to a quiet despair, a resignation that permeates your spirit. You might find yourself dreaming of possibilities that will never be realized, a painful reminder of your limited freedom. Living under perpetual male authority, where your husband has legal rights to chastise you, creates a constant undercurrent of fear and vulnerability within your own home. The threat of domestic violence sanctioned by law and custom means that even your safest space can become a source of profound anxiety. You learn to manage your husband's moods, to avoid provoking his anger, to navigate his temperament with careful precision. This constant vigilance, this need to appease, takes a heavy psychological toll, eroding your sense of safety and self-worth. The expectation of absolute chastity and purity, coupled with the brutal consequences of perceived transgression, casts a long shadow over your social interactions. Every word, every glance, every movement is scrutinized, making genuine connection outside of trusted circles incredibly difficult. You're constantly aware that any hint of impropriety, real or imagined, can lead to public humiliation and social ruin. This fear fosters a deep sense of isolation, even when surrounded by others. You learn to keep your emotions guarded, your true self, hidden from a world that judges you so harshly. And yet amidst these crushing burdens, you observe moments of quiet strength, of resilience born of shared hardship. Women find solace in each other, forming bonds of deep understanding and mutual support. A knowing glance, a shared sigh, a quiet word of comfort, these small acts of connection are vital. They allow you to share the unspoken burdens, to find a sense of community that transcends the harsh realities of your individual existence. These networks of female solidarity become a quiet lifeline, a source of strength that society in its rigid structure often overlooks. This inner strength, however, is often tested by the sheer scarcity of pleasure and comfort in medieval life. As you delve deeper into the emotional landscape of medieval women, you recognize that their quiet resilience is forged in a life characterized by a pervasive lack of pleasure and comfort, a stark contrast to modern existence. Imagine a world where true leisure is almost non-existent. For the vast majority, your days are consumed by the relentless grind of labour, from dawn till dusk, with barely a moment to spare for rest, let alone recreation. There are no weekends, no holidays in the modern sense, just a continuous cycle of toil, interrupted only by religious feast days, which, while offering a break from work, are still often imbued with religious obligations rather than pure relaxation. You're born to work, and work you do until your body aches. Your food, as you recall, is overwhelmingly bland and repetitive, serving purely as fuel rather than a source of delight. There are no exotic spices, no varied ingredients for the common folk. Imagine never experiencing the joy of a truly delicious meal, a meal that stimulates your palate and lifts your spirits. You eat to survive, and the act of eating becomes another mundane, unvaried chore, a constant reminder of scarcity. Even when there's enough to eat, it's rarely enjoyable. The concept of physical comfort, as you understand it today with soft beds, climate control, and easy access to cleanliness, is a distant dream. You live with perpetual dampness, cold and grime. Your clothes are rough and scratchy, your home is smoky and dimly lit, and you're constantly afflicted by pests. Imagine the simple luxury of a genuinely warm, clean bed or a hot bath whenever you desire. These simple pleasures taken for granted in your modern world are almost entirely absent in this reality, making your existence a constant negotiation with discomfort. Entertainment is rudimentary and rare. There are no books for the illiterate masses, no plays or concerts for common folk beyond occasional travelling performers or local festivals. Your diversions might include storytelling, by the fire simple games or communal singing. While these foster social bonds, they are far from the rich tapestry of entertainment available today. Life is serious, driven by survival, and moments of pure, unadulterated enjoyment are fleeting precious, and often accompanied by the guilt of not working. You learn to find small joys in simple things, the warmth of the sun on your face, the laughter of a child, a rare sweet berry. Privacy, as you've observed, is virtually non-existent. You share your living space, your bed, your very existence, with multiple family members and animals. There is no personal sanctuary, no quiet corner to retreat to, no solitude to process your thoughts or emotions. This constant proximity, while fostering community, also means a perpetual lack of personal space, a silent erosion of your individuality. You learn to build walls in your mind to carve out mental solitude where physical solitude is impossible. And yet amidst these crushing burdens you witness the profound human capacity for finding joy in the smallest things. A successful harvest, a new baby, a particularly warm fire on a cold night, the simple act of shared labour and companionship. These become disproportionately significant sources of happiness. You learn to appreciate these tiny moments of relief and connection, because they are the rare sparks of light in a largely dark and difficult existence. These simple joys become vital coping mechanisms, allowing women to persevere in the face of relentless hardship, highlighting the deep, quiet strength that defines survival in the medieval world, a strength that often leads to acts of quiet defiance and resilience against the prevailing structures. As you reflect on the sheer scarcity of pleasure, your thoughts inevitably drift back to the quiet acts of resistance and resilience that persist despite such overwhelming odds. You might think that a society so rigidly structured, so brutally enforced, would leave no room for defiance, but you would be mistaken. Even in the face of profound oppression, women found ways both subtle and significant to assert their agency and maintain their dignity. This isn't about grand rebellions, but about the tenacious human spirit finding cracks in the edifice of control. One of the most powerful forms of subtle subversion was the cultivation of community support and female networks. When a woman fell ill or was struggling with childbirth or simply needed a hand with the endless domestic chores, it was often her female neighbours and relatives who stepped in. You witness women forming informal bonds, sharing resources, knowledge, and emotional support. This mutual aid, often overlooked by male authority, created a parallel system of care and solidarity that was essential for survival. It was a silent agreement, an unwritten code of women helping women where the strictures of patriarchy were momentarily softened by shared empathy and necessity. Storytelling, an ancient and powerful art, became another quiet form of resistance. Imagine women gathered around a fire spinning tales of brave heroines, clever tricksters, or resilient figures who overcame adversity. These stories passed down orally from generation to generation often contained hidden messages of defiance, lessons in navigating treacherous social waters, or simply provided a momentary escape from the grim realities of life. They nurtured a sense of shared identity, and provided a mental space where women could imagine different possibilities, even if only in their minds. You learn that stories can be a powerful weapon against despair. Maintaining an indomitable inner strength and dignity, even when your outward actions were constrained, was a profound act of defiance. You observe women who, despite constant hardship and indignity, carried themselves with a quiet grace, refusing to let their spirit be entirely crushed. This inner fortitude, often expressed through quiet resilience in the face of suffering, was a powerful statement against a system that sought to dehumanize them. It was a refusal to internalize the message that they were merely property or subservient beings. In the domestic sphere, women often exerted significant influence through their management of the household economy. While their husbands might control the land, you as the wife managed the daily budget, stretched meagre resources, and made countless decisions that directly impacted the family's survival. Your skills in preserving food, managing livestock, and crafting necessities were indispensable. This practical authority, though often unacknowledged in formal power structures, gave women a vital, tangible role and a sense of purpose. You might not own the land, but you make sure the family eats. Sometimes resistance took the form of quiet personal rebellions, acts that were small but significant. Perhaps a woman chose to delay marriage for as long as possible, or subtly influenced her daughter's choice of husband within the narrow confines available. Perhaps she defied religious dictates by secretly using herbal concoctions for birth control, risking severe punishment for the sake of her own body and family size. These were not public protests, but intimate acts of self-determination, often born of desperation, but nonetheless expressions of agency. Even in moments of shared toil, women found small pleasures and forged deep, enduring bonds. The camaraderie of the laundry line, the shared laughter over a neighbour's antics, the quiet support during childbirth, these were vital moments of connection. They shared gossip, complaints, and hopes, creating micro-narratives of connection that allowed them to persevere. These shared bonds, these moments of levity amidst the toil, were not just coping mechanisms. They were a quiet affirmation of their shared humanity, and a powerful antidote to the isolation imposed by societal norms. This quiet collective strength stands in stark contrast to the absolute vulnerability of those who are truly unattached and marginalized, discarded by a society that offered them no place. Having witnessed the quiet tenacity of women who found resilience within their societal bonds, you're now confronted with the harrowing reality of those who stood outside these tenuous protections, the unattached women and societal outcasts whose lives were quite literally discarded. You recognize that deep societal suspicion was automatically cast upon unmarried women, particularly those without male relatives to defend them. Widows without adult sons or older single women who had never married were often seen as unnatural, a deviation from the expected order. This made them frequent convenient scapegoats for any communal misfortune, from a blighted crop to a mysterious illness. Imagine your neighbours turning on you, fueled by fear and superstition, simply because you lack a male protector. Without the crucial protection and control of a male relative or husband unattached, females were considered dangerous, unnatural liabilities. Society in its rigid structure provided no formal social safety nets for them. This left them precariously vulnerable to poverty, exploitation, and accusations. You might see them reduced to desperate begging, their eyes hollow with hunger, or struggling to survive on the fringes of your community. They were in essence utterly disposable in a society that valued women primarily for their relationships to men. Their worth was tied to their utility within a patriarchal system, and without that utility they were rendered invisible or worse targets. Those who resorted to prostitution to survive lived on the absolute margins of society. They were a grim necessity in medieval cities often confined to designated red-light districts like Southwark in London, a place of dubious repute you might hear whispered about. Yet if these women were caught plying their trade outside those boundaries, they faced severe fines and brutal public humiliation in the stocks. Imagine being paraded through the streets, your face covered in shame, while crowds jeered and threw refuse. Their lives were considered utterly cheap and disposable, their existence a testament to the desperate choices forced upon women with no other means. For the most desperate, survival often meant resorting to begging or vagrancy, a life outside any established community. This exposed them to swift and brutal treatment at the hands of the law. Unattached women, particularly those wandering without a clear male guardian or familial ties, were perceived as a threat to social order, a source of potential chaos. They were subject to merciless flogging, branding, or even mutilation for what might seem to you like minor transgressions. The roads and forests offered no sanctuary, only further peril and the constant threat of state violence. You learn quickly that to be outside the male-controlled family unit is to be outside the law's protection and often its mercy. Even women who had been married faced a grim future if widowed without adult sons or family support. Often impoverished, they became utterly reliant on the grudging charity of others. You might see them reduced to living in cramped, cold conditions, frequently seen as nothing more than a burden by relatives who barely had enough to feed themselves. Their past contributions, their years of labour and childbearing often counted for little once their male protector was gone. It was a bleak, often lonely existence. For some unmarriageable or socially undesirable noblewomen, the convent or even an anchoress's cell was presented as a better option. While it offered refuge and a veneer of respectability, preventing them from becoming a burden or a social embarrassment to their families, it still constituted a lifetime of permanent, often solitary confinement. This choice was often no choice at all, merely a less brutal form of imprisonment within the rigid societal structure. You'd think, wouldn't you, that a noble woman would have more freedom, but no, even their options were tightly controlled, just with different trappings. With little or no independent legal standing, these marginalised women had virtually no recourse against exploitation, violence, or false accusations. Their lives were incredibly precarious, constantly teetering on the edge of utter destitution and danger. This often led to agonising, desperate choices, each decision a gamble with their very survival. Their struggles, largely invisible to history, are a stark reminder of the depth of brutality faced by those outside the protective, albeit oppressive, male-dominated social fabric. Continuing our exploration of marginalised women, you're left with a chilling understanding of what it truly means to be discarded by a society that values structure and male protection above all else. For these women, life is not just hard. It is a relentless, exhausting fight for every single breath, every scrap of sustenance. Imagine the profound, aching loneliness that accompanies constant social suspicion. Every averted gaze, every door closed in your face, every whisper that follows you in the street is a constant reinforcement of your unwelcome status. You're an anomaly, a threat, a burden, and this judgment shapes your world, making every interaction a test, every moment fraught with potential peril. The sheer desperation for food and shelter becomes a consuming force. For those who resorted to begging, it's not a choice but a last resort, an utter humiliation. You sit or stand for hours, perhaps with a gaunt child clutching your threadbare skirt, holding out a trembling hand, enduring the indifference, the disdain, or the occasional grudging coin tossed your way. The pangs of hunger are not just a discomfort. They are a constant companion, a dull ache that never truly leaves you even in sleep. You eat what you can find, often spoiled scraps, or go, without knowing that starvation is always a breath away. For vagrant women, the elements become their constant, merciless adversary. You try to find shelter in abandoned barns under bridges, or simply huddle against a wall in a town alley. The biting cold of winter, the relentless rain, the sweltering heat of summer, these are not just weather, they're direct threats to your survival. Without a home, without a roof, your body is perpetually exposed, your health constantly deteriorating. You learn to recognize the subtle signs of illness in yourself, knowing that there is no one to care for you, no one to offer a warm blanket or a healing draught. Your cough might turn to consumption and minor wounds to a fatal infection, all without the comfort of a kind hand. The threat of violence for these women is omnipresent. Without male protection, you are utterly vulnerable to exploitation, robbery, and physical assault. There is no one to defend you, no law enforcement interested in your plight. You learn to walk warily, to trust no one, to keep your eyes down, to make yourself as invisible as possible. The fear is a cold knot in your stomach, a constant reminder of your precarious existence. You're literally fair game, and the injustice of it is a profound, crushing weight. Even the small kindnesses shown by strangers are often tinged with pity, or a fleeting sense of moral obligation rather than genuine empathy. You are always aware of the social distance, the chasm that separates you from respectable society. This constant reinforcement of your outcast status can lead to profound psychological impacts. A deep sense of shame, of worthlessness, a quiet rage at the unfairness of it all. You are in essence an unperson stripped of dignity and humanity by the very society that created your desperate circumstances. You might think, wouldn't you, that society would offer some basic care, but no, a medieval safety net is largely a spider's web for those caught in its threads. And perhaps most chillingly, the lives of these women are largely unrecorded, forgotten by history. No one writes novels about your kind, no one carves your name in stone, no one remembers your struggles. You're a silent statistic, a nameless face in the vast brutal tapestry of medieval suffering. Your existence, though, filled with unimaginable hardship, leaves no lasting mark on the grand narratives of the time. You simply vanish, another life consumed by the indifference of a rigid, unforgiving world. Your vulnerability is absolute, your plight often invisible, a stark testament to the ultimate brutality of a society that offers no place and no mercy to those who fall through its cracks. As the final echoes of medieval struggle softly fade, allow your mind to gently detach from the distant past. You've journeyed through a world of profound hardship, where life for women was a relentless tapestry of challenge, demanding immense resilience and strength. Now, as the ambient sounds of your own peaceful space re-enter your awareness, take a deep, slow breath. Feel the comforting weight of your blanket, the warmth of your room, the quiet hum of modern life just beyond your walls. Consider the simple comforts you might take for granted. A soft bed free of persistent pests, clean running water, the knowledge that a good meal is readily available, or the freedom to make your own choices about your future. These are profound gifts purchased by centuries of human struggle, including the quiet, unyielding battles fought by the women of the Middle Ages. Their lives, though often unrecorded, laid subtle foundations for the world you inhabit now. Let any lingering thoughts of their arduous existence gently recede like shadows lengthening at dusk. There is no need to hold on to the discomfort, only to carry the quiet wisdom of their endurance. Your journey through their world is complete for tonight. Allow your body to sink deeper into the comfort beneath you, your muscles relaxing, your breath slowing, becoming soft and even. The distant past has offered its lessons, and now it's time for rest. Let your mind drift calm and peaceful as you slip into the quiet embrace of sleep.